Patricia, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the invitation to speak at your seminar this morning. It's always a pleasure to come to Aberdeen. I'm sorry that today it's a rather shorter visit than usual, but I was particularly keen to have the chance to set the scene and some of the thoughts which we have in government about the proposed European regulation and the reasons why we are so concerned about it. I'm also delighted to reinforce exactly what Tricia was saying about, to me, one of the most important aspects of an event like this. It shows that industry, government, the trades unions and others are all working in the same direction and have the same shared objectives. I think we're all here because of our commitment to ensure that we never again see an event such as the Gulf of Mexico. And the European Commission's intent of trying to increase standards of safety and of environmental protection right across the European Union must therefore be welcomed. After all, what company or government would knowingly risk the human, environmental, economic or reputational damage which could result from such an incident? But whilst I very much welcome the intent of the Commission to raise standards, including the already high standards that we have in the United Kingdom, and we will never be complacent about those, that I am profoundly concerned that implementation by means of a regulation might result in a significant revocation and amendment of existing equivalent UK legislation. Additional national implementing legislation would be needed to give the competent authority the powers to enforce a European regulation. This could in turn lead to costly and wasteful redrafting of existing government guidance and industry manuals and procedures. This exercise would divert frontline safety and environmental inspectors and practitioners from vital hands-on inspection and assessment work whilst carrying out the redrafting work, and that could last for some years, potentially 5 years. The result of this could actually be a reduction in the high levels of offshore safety and environmental control currently found in the North Sea, and potentially costly delays to consenting of oil company activities. A carefully crafted directive would, on the other hand, still allow the imposition of common high standards throughout Europe, but a directive would not involve the replacement of existing equivalent domestic legislation and the development of new implementing legislation in member states. Nor would it require the production of as much government guidance and industry documentation. A directive could therefore be implemented much more quickly. And when I recently met Commissioner Oettinger, he seemed to be impressed by that argument. And I explained to him that if it's a regulation, we will be fighting that every inch of the way, whereas if it's a directive, we will work with them to try and make sure it can be implemented swiftly. The Commissioner has also confirmed to me that the Commission is not seeking direct regulation of the offshore sector from Brussels. And the words he used to me are important. He said, such direct regulation is contrary to the Commission's proposals for placing primary responsibility for safety with industry and for regulatory oversight and enforcement with member states. But those negotiations are still progressing, and there is still much which may change. The Commission is not the only party to these negotiations. In addition to the Council of Ministers, there is also the European Parliament. And we can, as always, expect that the members of the European Parliament will express a variety of views in a very forceful manner. And I would urge you as an industry and as others involved in this debate to actively engage with the members of the European Parliament to ensure that at every step of the way they understand your views and concerns. A brief debate was held on the offshore issue recently in the Energy Committee of the European Parliament, and it's possible that you will touch on some of the issues which they raised in the course of this seminar. We expect the next debate to be in early July, with a possible report date in early October. It's also important that we do not forget the detail of the proposals, in addition to the form of the instrument within which they are contained. And I know that some of you may have seen the most recent text in April of this year of the draft regulation. And I hope you will agree that whilst much still remains to be done, it is an improvement on the original text. My officials, together with the colleagues in the Foreign Office and the Health and Safety Executive, will continue to negotiate hard to improve that text further. And we will certainly be liaising closely across government and with industry in the positions which we take. One of the other outstanding issues in the present draft is the Commission's proposed use of delegated acts to implement changes following the adoption of the regulation or directive. I understand that the Commission's view is that such acts are designed to avoid going through the whole of the Brussels machinery in order to make changes to non-essential parts of legislation. Where I differ from that view is that the information contained in parts of the draft regulation covered by the delegated acts seem to me to be so fundamental that they should be contained within the main part of the body of the proposed directive or regulation. Delegated acts should therefore not be used in such circumstances. Now, I know from my meetings with industry that you share the views that I've expressed here, and I know too that as individual companies through the OGP, you've been actively lobbying my fellow energy ministers in Europe and members of the European Parliament. And I do urge you to continue to do so, just as I will do so. I will be talking to Commissioner Oettinger further about this at the Energy Council meeting in Luxembourg on Friday, and we've used every opportunity to engage with other energy ministers to ensure that they understand and can support the position which we've put forward. In particular, putting a great deal of work into liaison with the Cypriots as the next presidency and with Ireland as the presidency after that. And I was pleased to hear that at a European Commission stakeholder meeting in February, there was widespread support for our view amongst industry and the trades unions and other member states about the right way forward on this issue. But as I say, the Commission is made up of many other countries, 27 member states, the bulk of whom do not have offshore oil and gas resources. And so it's important that we reassure those states in particular that it is not our intention or the industry's intention to resist sensible improvements in offshore safety and environmental protection. Far from it. It will be far too easy for the UK and industry's desire for a sensible directive to be misrepresented as opposition to any form of change, and so we need to use every opportunity we have to reinforce our commitment to the highest possible standards of safety and environmental protection. Our regulatory system has been developed to meeting evolving challenges, and I believe it is robust and fit for purpose. We've learned from the experiences both at home and abroad, and following the terrible Piper Alpha disaster, safety regulation was brought under the Health and Safety Executive umbrella to get the benefit of their expertise in regulating major hazards, separating it crucially from the Energy Department. And of course, DECLO still plays a vital role in overseeing the exploration, development, production and environmental performance of the offshore industry. So whilst not being complacent, I think we can nevertheless look at events such as the recent Elgin gas leak to see that when potentially serious incidents occur in the United Kingdom sector, we do have systems in place to respond in a textbook manner. Operator, regulator and emergency services have demonstrated their abilities to the full. So my objective, which I hope you will share, is that we do not jeopardize such a system as a consequence of the Commission's current proposals, but rather we improve it still further in a sensible and measured fashion. The work of OSPRAG and the outputs from the Maitland review demonstrate, I hope, that here in the UK, both industry and government are working hard to learn the lessons of Macondo and to put them into practical effect. Indeed, the Maitland report also acknowledges the extent to which UK operators and industry bodies have mobilised themselves since Deepwater Horizon in an effort to raise standards. The review has, however, identified a number of important areas, particularly around the assured implementation of regulatory requirements and the promulgation of best practice, where there appears scope to achieve further improvement. So to conclude, I wish you well in this seminar, which I think is a very important occasion for bringing together all of those who have an interest in this discussion. And I hope I've been able to reassure you on the issue of a directive versus regulation and the other matters I've touched upon. I not only fully share your concerns, but I will work tirelessly to bring about a change in the Commission's proposals, and will use every opportunity to do so. I know that you as an industry and as trades unions and others will continue to make similar efforts in your own way, and I encourage you to take those work streams forward as effectively and strongly as you can. There is so much to play for here. After all, as the latest offshore licensing round has demonstrated, there is still an extraordinary level of interest in the UK CS, the highest level of licence applications since it started in the 1960s, and applications therefore breaking all previous records. This is tremendous news for this industry and for the UK economy. So let us work together to ensure that this immense success of such importance to your industry, to your workforce, to us as a nation, continues to move forward. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Charles, for setting out so clearly and unequivocally the position of the government and also the progress on your negotiations in Brussels. Now, Charles has very kindly agreed to stay on for 5 minutes or so before he has to catch a flight back down south to take some questions from the floor. There is a roving mic, so if you want to ask Charles Hendry a question, please put up your hand and introduce yourself, your name and your company before asking your question, please. Thank you. Gentleman down the front, please.
Thank you very much. Christian Schwark from PG Group. How has the Norwegian government's decision that the regulation won't apply to Norway affected, if at all, the UK's position on this?
Well, I think the first impact of that is that the Commission realised that for one of the most important countries in Europe, albeit outside the EU, that they may not be covered by the measures they're putting in place, and therefore I think it requires them to rethink the approach which they're taking. I think that the Norwegian government's decision focuses on the fact that this is a grey area. The Commission doesn't have competence on energy matters, it does have competence on environmental matters. And that we've also been making the case that we see this as an issue about energy every bit as much as it is about environmental matters. So that we don't necessarily have the same ability as Norway to walk away from that, but nevertheless, I think it is an important part of the armoury of weapons which we have at our disposal to persuade the Commission that this is not the right way of going about things.
Do you have another question? Yes, another gentleman at the front.
Thanks very much, Minister. Barry King, ConocoPhillips. It's just a quick one. We appreciate the support the UK government is giving. You've given very unequivocal statements this morning. From an industry side then, you know, we've obviously been engaging with the Council, but you also mentioned the Parliament. Can you give us more thoughts from your side as to how you would see us engaging with the Parliament, because they are a different kettle of fish, dare I say it, to the Council. They've not got into the detail yet. They're still mulling things over. Thank you.
I think one of the things which has impressed me most here is that on this occasion the European Parliament is speaking much more clearly with a single voice than we often find. And I think that has happened because of the extent to which it is a coalition of industry and unions and others together. And therefore that areas where we may not have expected to see cross-party support has been very, very welcome indeed here. So I think this isn't just about the industry doing things. It's critical that the unions are involved in this process as well. That's engagement with individual members of Parliament, obviously the lead spokesman from the different groups, the relevant committees. I know a lot of work is already going into those and to working with the rapporteur and others to try and ensure that they fully understand the issues here. But it's that coalition perspective which I think is absolutely critical to taking this forward. I would urge you to spread your net widely. That even if somebody at the first glance doesn't look as if they're somebody who has a direct interest in this area, that they are constantly talking to other members of the European Parliament. The more that the individual MEPs, wherever they happen to come from across the European Union, understand this is an issue, understand how it might affect companies which are based in the area which they represent, then the more likely they are to seek out the chairman of the committee, the rapporteur, and to make the case to them about saying this has been done in the wrong way. But that it started off from a very good position in the European Parliament. We can't always say that, but on this occasion it really has. And so carrying that work forward and not relenting in that activity programme, I think has to be very important in taking it forward.
Okay, well, Unless there are any other questions, I know that Charles does have to shoot off to catch a flight. So could you please join me in thanking him very much for coming up to Aberdeen especially to speak to us today. Thank you very much. Thank you.